Welcome to the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast, offering tips, insights, and advice from the best in the publishing industry.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of All Things Book Marketing. I'm your host, Olivia McCoy, and our special guest today is Matt Treacey. Matt is the go-to email marketing consultant for some of the world's top business authors. Hi, Matt.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to you today about email marketing. But first, let's start with an introduction. Tell me more about you, what you do, and how you help authors, including telling us a little bit more about your new book, Natural Orders, which I know is all about that.
Yeah, great. So look, people typically come to me when they're already doing a little bit of stuff with email marketing. They already have an email list, but they're looking to take it to the next level. So email is actually a really powerful channel, especially if you're an author. I mean, I work with people just more broadly in like digital content publishing, but authors are a big part of what I do. So look, I mean, email, when you look at it, it's the largest and most active channel online. It's the highest engagement channel by far. It's the highest ROI channel on a lot of different measures. And I mean, one of the big benefits of it is that it allows you to actually avoid platform risk, which means you can own your audience, own your data, and that's what allows you to get some of those big outcomes of ROI. So what I do is I'll typically sit down with authors or someone else who's in the digital content publishing space, and I'll help them map out what I call their subscriber journey. So the point from where someone joins your email list, what their experience is going to be, how they're telling their story, how they're introducing their product, how they're taking people through the different stages of awareness to eventually get to the point where you can safely and profitably expose them to product offers and your books and other things like that.
That's exciting. So just to help me out a little bit, what is email marketing and how is it different than a newsletter?
Yeah, definitely. So that's something that's often conflated. So look, a newsletter is probably under the umbrella of email marketing. So some people, when they just get started, they're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to start a newsletter and that's my email marketing strategy sorted. And that's a great place to start. And they're very popular for a reason. There's some incredible businesses that have been built off the back of just sending a newsletter every week, right? I can name a few, but that's really just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what you can do with email and what makes the channel so powerful. When you really start getting into stuff like automation and automating that subscriber journey that I was talking about earlier, that's when you really start seeing the magic of the channel.
As far as my work goes, I generally will create like an automated welcome email for new subscribers to a newsletter, but that's kind of as deep into that world as I've gone personally. So what does that look like? What does email marketing entail in general?
Yeah,
Maybe a
so
bigger
that's
picture.
definitely. So that's a common place where people start. They'll start with these like autoresponder sequences in their email marketing service of choice, at EMS. There's a whole different type of those that you can use. But yeah, it really builds up from there. And this is what the point of, you asked me to speak about the book a little bit. This is what the point of the book is. So I wrote the book for people who are really at that point. And they're thinking, okay, doing some of these basic things with email, what comes next? And it's really written to answer that question. And it's where does email fit in your marketing mix? What is the full potential of the channel? What does it look like when I've actually set up like a really full-on proper email marketing system? So my background is actually in ecology. So I studied briefly and worked briefly in ecology before coming into marketing. And really the impetus behind the whole idea of Natural Orders, the book, is that when I first got into marketing, I noticed some of these superficial similarities between ecosystems and nature and marketing that a lot of people have before me noticed. So some of the common ones I talk about are like you have a total addressable market in marketing, which is very similar to your carrying capacity in an ecosystem. There's some even more superficial ones like niches, like we have niches for organisms in an ecosystem. We have niches in the marketplace. So there are some of these, but when I got into email marketing, I started noticing that these things were a little bit more profound and really a lot more useful. So I've found that the analogy really helps in two ways. So the first one is by thinking about your email marketing strategy and your email list as an ecosystem that you have to grow over time. It helps you avoid some of the really common, quite disastrous mistakes that people often make when they first get started doing some of the more advanced stuff. And then second of all, it helps you take this mindset of I'm building my own, what I refer to walled garden, right? You're competing with all of these other platforms online like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can have an audience on each of those, but they can be taken away from you without recourse, right? Algorithm changes, policy updates, you can be banned, anything like this. So if you start thinking of it, okay, I'm growing this database, this walled garden over time, I think the analogy really lends itself to that.
I love that. I love the combination of two different passions that seem to be completely unrelated, but in fact, turns out have a lot more in common than you would have expected. When did the book come out? Or has it come
Probably
out?
it was November last year. I'm terrible with dates, by the
Nice.
way, but yeah, I think it was around this time last year.
That's exciting. Well, congratulations. And thank you for letting us know about it.
Yeah, pleasure.
So then let's start from the beginning. Email marketing. How do you grow an email list and attract new subscribers?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So very hard part of the puzzle is you've got to get traffic, right? That's
Yeah.
something which necessitates playing around in some of these walled gardens I'm talking about. A lot of authors or people, digital publishing more broadly, they'll have audiences on social channels or they'll have some organic traffic coming to their site. The risk is, like I've spoken about, is relying on those things for a long period of time. That stuff's not going to last forever and it changes. So you really need to be thinking about capturing those people on your email list. And what I often say, and I talk about this in the book, is the most important metric on your website is something I call traffic to subscriber conversion, or TSC for short. So it's the amount, that's the percentage of traffic that's getting converted to subscribers. So when I say that, a lot of people maybe automatically defaults thinking about some of those spammy tactics of like pop-ups and really aggressive things like that. I'd like to say that's absolutely the wrong way to go about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Refreshing.
There's definitely a balance that needs to be struck between obviously optimizing towards that metric, but then number one, above all, respecting your traffic, respecting your readers, respecting your potential subscribers, and having that attitude all the way through the subscriber journey, right? From the minute they land on your website. So sometimes you go onto a site and you'll see something like join my newsletter or download this PDF with top 10 tips to improve XYZ. That stuff is, I mean, everyone has seen it. Everyone knows what to expect. People have been ripped off by that stuff before. You really need to be going a step further and offering something of real value that helps people solve a real problem that they're happy to exchange their email address for, and that they know when they're giving you their email address, they're entering into your kind of little world that you're creating, right? And it's a passage point into learning more about what you're all about. That's how you need to perceive it.
It's all clicking now. I'm seeing why an ecology major would be interested in natural relationships, authenticity. That's really interesting. Do you have a specific example that you give when you're talking about something of value that you can offer?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So some of the examples that currently work, and all tactics. I mean, there's the law of shitty click-throughs. Pardon my language, but that's Andrew Chan said that. One of the this VC guy, and he said basically all marketing tactics have a half-life, right? I really try to avoid like talking about tactics too much because we'll listen to this podcast 6 months from now and some of them will have changed. I really try to focus on timeless marketing principles. But look, to answer your question, some of the stuff that seems to work really well now are tools, right? So if you go to your Google Analytics and you sort your top pages by traffic, you're going to see some sort of Pareto distribution, an 80-20, something roughly like that, where the majority of your traffic is attributed to the top 5 pages or so. Look at what the search intent or the traffic intent is on those pages, and then come up with something really valuable for those people. So say you've written article about, let me just think for a moment, how to self-publish a book, right? It's a big page. You're getting tens of thousands of uniques every month. So you could approach it the typical way and say, put an opt-in there and says, hey, subscribe for more updates. That's not going to convert very well. That'll probably get you somewhere around the industry average of 1.95% T2C. But if you use something like a tool, so say you gave them like a full-on spreadsheet for everything already formatted, everything pre-filled with formulas and everything to calculate their ROI of their ad spend when they do Amazon and Facebook ads. That's something that could be really, really valuable to the audience if it's relevant at that point. That goes far beyond just your typical PDF with 10 tips or something. So tools are really effective. Quizzes seem to convert pretty well. I mean, BuzzFeed was built off the idea of quizzes converting so well, and just people love doing a little quiz. I mean, they still work, and there's a place for that. So yeah, anything that really moves the needle in terms of value for the reader, for the audience. Software, I mean, really think above and beyond. A full course. A lot of people have these courses that they sell for $500, $1,000. Give it for free. Give them your course for free. And if they're really someone who's got a burning problem and a problem to address, they'll do your course. And then that'll be a great way to introduce email marketing after that, because you'll be able to walk them through the course. You've got to think a little bit bigger with this stuff.
And what are some common mistakes by those who are new to email marketing? I know we talked a little bit about being too spammy or not offering enough value for an email. What are some others?
Yeah. Okay. So, probably the biggest one that I see, especially for people who are starting to get a little bit more advanced with it. So you mentioned you've got your welcome sequence set up.
Yeah.
So you'll build from there, right? And then you'll start building another sequence for people who've come in through another channel. Then you'll have some sort of purchase sequence. You'll have, maybe you've got a course or something, and you'll have a whole series of emails around that. What happens is things get very complex very quickly. And it can get away from you. And people try to pen out this big masterpiece automation with all these different paths and everything, right? You really need to start from simple foundations. I think it's called Gall's law. So a simple system that works, a complex system that works inevitably resulted from a simple system that worked. So that also goes back to the natural principles, right? You start with very simple building blocks that build upon one another. So that's number one. Number two is something that I talk about in the book. It's called I call it the top-down cascade. So it's basically the ecosystem collapsing into itself. People join your email list, and then if you don't heed the advice of respecting the subscriber relationship, if you've started it off poorly and then you start hitting people with offers. So imagine you join someone's email list and they're just like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. You're going to think, no, thank you. You're going to first stop opening their emails. And if they get annoying enough, you're going to unsubscribe. And you're completely shooting yourself in the foot, because it's your best channel and you're losing people. You're filling a leaky bucket. So the top-down cascade is when you get poor open rates, which lead to low unsubscribes, to high unsubscribes, sorry. And then the combination of that often impacts your sender score in your email marketing system. So your deliverability becomes affected. And it's this downward spiral, snake eating its tail, Ouroboros effect of just catastrophe. And you absolutely have to avoid it. And that's really the framework in the book that I talk about is really built around avoiding that, and respect is a big part of it.
Is there a good way to market your book without being too spammy, or even just a percentage of offering value and then asking for something in return?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head a little bit with the second thing that you said. So look, I've got all sorts of things that I typically say, like little phrases and that, but I think really just keep in mind, don't annoy people. Don't do spammy stuff. I mean, people so often associate email marketing with spam, and for good reason, because there's so many dodgy practices out there. But if you actually take a step back and you look at how powerful the channel is and what it can really do for your business and for your goals as an author, it's immensely powerful. So look, I always say, one of the things I often say is every time you send an email, look to educate, inspire, or entertain. If you're not doing at least one of those things, put the email away and send a different one.
I love that. It actually reminds me of a piece of advice I got maybe a year or two ago. That was, any communication you're doing digitally, virtually, online should be the exact same as talking to someone at a party. You're not going to walk up to someone randomly that you don't know and be like, hey, buy my book. I have a book out. Do you know that? Buy my book. Because that's awkward and weird. And this person doesn't know you and they're probably going to run away. But if you go up and you just start talking, introduce yourself, get to know them, find your commonalities, and this is in general with an audience, then it naturally comes up, oh, actually, I do have a book on this topic, and it is available everywhere, but also, I have other things going on, and I'll continue to use this newsletter, whatnot. Just be natural with it. So that's good. I like that. Entertain, inspire, and educate.
Yeah, there you got it.
Okay, cool. I got it. I'm going to lock it up.
That's great. Look, I like that analogy because that's even more personal. But the one I sometimes lean on is, imagine you're standing in front of a stadium of, say, you've got an email list of 5,000 people. It's like you're standing in front of the stadium every time you send a newsletter email, right? Yeah, I mean, if some people have 100,000, 200,000 person email list, I mean, it's pretty common for authors to have a list that size. It's a big stadium. If you get up there and you just don't even introduce yourself, you don't say anything, you just say, buy my book, people think they'll boo you, right? They'll start leaving. And rightfully so. I mean, you've got to lead with value. And look, I mean, just as a segue, that the way that you do that, the way that I recommend to do that is, there's this thing called the 5 stages of awareness. There's a classic book called Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz, copywriting book. But it's a way to structure your communication with your audience, breaks it down to these 5 different stages of awareness. And you, as Robert Collier says, you enter the conversation going on the prospect's mind. So if someone comes into your email list and they've got a problem to solve, you meet them at talking about that problem. So all your communication is about, resurfacing that problem and then providing solution space to that problem. So talking about all the different solutions on offer, actually genuinely helping them solve that problem, and then introducing your products as one of those solutions. That's how you should really go about structuring your communication. And it might take 5 or 10 emails. That's how you always lead with value. And it also answers the question of, sometimes one of the objections to this whole idea of respect your audience, lead with value, blah, 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 is, well, when am I going to actually make money from this? Because email's all about, fundamentally, it's marketing, right? You're trying to make a sale. But really, it's about getting people to that point where you can comfortably and profitably introduce your product as one of the solutions to the problems that they're having.
Well, we also know that personal recommendations from friends, colleagues, family are more likely to lead to the point of purchase than a random stranger recommendation. If you're out in the world, it may take you seeing something 5 to 15 times where you're like, yeah, I've seen this everywhere, I should buy it. But if your friend or coworker is like, you got to check this out, they're going to go and trust that recommendation and buy it. So it's building trust with the email list, so that the 20% of your content that is marketing something, I'm going to use a book as an example, is them trusting a friend now, right? Or a trusted colleague or professional, I guess.
That's so true. Yeah. Hey, something I've not really mentioned before, but look, you get into marketing and there's these like triggers of class, commitment, liking, authority, scarcity, social proof, reciprocity. The longer I've been in marketing, the more I realize just social proof and appeal to authority are absolutely everything. The more you pull those 2 triggers, and exactly what you're saying about, like, that's why word of mouth is still number 1, no matter what anyone
always
says.
Forever.
Yeah, people do what other people do. People will look at what other people recommend. That's how we make decisions, right? Or especially if they're an authority figure, or if they're further ahead of us or something, right? It's everything. So yeah, that's a huge part of it.
So you mentioned some of the stats on how you know something isn't working. How do you know if something is resonating with your email list? As far as content goes, what are some of the numbers and metrics you should be looking for?
Yeah, that's a can of worms these days.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. it used to be pretty simple. You could say, okay, target this open rate, target this click rate or whatever. That stuff's getting harder and harder to track. So you really need to have your goals set of what you're trying to measure in each campaign, in each automation, in what you're doing, where you're driving people, what outcomes you're looking for, and then find a way to actually measure that outcome independently. So I used to be able to say, oh, if you've got a 35% plus open rate, yeah, you've probably got okay engagement. Keep your unsubscribes below 0.35%. That one's still good. You don't want your unsubscribes too high. So just to zoom out a little bit, it used to be, okay, good engagement means having good open rates, good click rates, low unsubscribes, and people interacting with your emails and replying to your emails. Okay, and then you can say, okay, my list health is pretty good. Not so simple anymore. Now what you need to really look at is low unsubscribes is still good. Make sure people aren't running away from your stadium when you're talking to them. And then number 2 is some sort of like tracked click-through metric. So what does that mean? It means if I'm sending you to a page on my site, actually look at how much traffic from that email campaign has ended up on that site, and then you can get a little bit of a better read or an outcome. So if you've got a CTA in an email or on a page on a site or on a friend's site or wherever you're sending them, how many people actually completed that CTA, right? Takes a few steps out of the funnel, make the conversion rate optimization a little bit harder, but you're going straight to the outcome. Attribution is very hard anyway, so it's better to just look at what the actual outcome is.
And the CTA is the call to action, whether that's visit a website, buy a book, download this thing, whatever that the button says, right?
Yep, that's it.
Perfect. Awesome. Good. How can our listeners and watchers get in touch and learn more about you, about your book, about your work?
Yeah, so if you go to naturalordersbook.com, that'll just be all about the book, but it's also my site. It'll have a whole bunch of other articles on there, a little bit more about me and what I do, and how to get in touch if you're interested in learning more about how to take your email marketing to the next level. Always happy for a chat.
And that's where we're going to be able to subscribe. Right?
Yeah, there's a few subscribe points on there, non-spammy ones, hopefully.
Perfect. Good. So then we'll automatically have an example in your website when everyone goes to check it out. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And listeners, watchers, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with anyone else that might be interested. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Smith Publicity All Things Book Marketing Podcast. To reach us and learn about our many services, visit smithpublicity.com or send us an email to info@smithpublicity.com.